All right. Thank you, George.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is George Atalla. I lead EY's global government business. I hope everyone had a wonderful lunch. I know I did. I apologize. I'm speaking in English. I come here often enough that I should have learned the language by now, so I have really no good excuse. What we're going to talk about is digital innovation in government. And before I get started, just a little bit about why this topic was important for us. We started noticing that government always talks about innovation, about doing things differently, but we also saw that a lot of the projects that governments were taking on are failing. And when we started thinking, why is this failing? Why are these projects that seem to have a lot of agreement around them, why are they failing? And we noticed that this failure wasn't just happening in emerging countries. So you could not just blame it on lack of technology or lack of capable people. We've had many failures in very advanced countries. If you've been following, for instance, in the US, the rollout of the new healthcare system, Obamacare, was planned for a $100 million budget. It ended up costing $1.7 billion, so 17 times more. And then the day they launched it, a few days later, it failed. So this is what made us start thinking, there has to be something else besides technology and besides capability that is causing these projects to fail. And this is when we started talking to INSEAD. So, if you look at this slide, I think the expectations of citizens from government, it's a little bit, everyone wants their government to be a little bit like Amazon, where you go online, you order, and, hopefully you get it the next day. But governments have not been able to do this. So they have not been able to put enough technology to be able to respond to the citizens' need. This is on the one hand. And on the other hand, there is additional competitiveness between governments. Budgets are becoming tighter. There are a lot of challenges. Now, so governments look and they say, all right, what are the technologies that are available to us and what can we use? And they see that there's a lot of technologies out there between robotics process automation, artificial intelligence, data analytics. there are a lot of things. So then the question, how do you use this so that we can improve the services that we deliver to citizens? Now, while all of this is happening, there are budget problems, there are problems with organizations, all sorts of, really deep bottlenecks that handicap the innovation process. And so this is when we started talking to INSEAD, the French business school, and we said we're very interested in this topic. What can we do to learn a little bit about how to make this digital innovation in government be more successful? How can we make it succeed? And how can we avoid the failure? And talking to INSEAD, they said, well, why don't we actually find case studies that we can analyze and see what we can learn from those case studies. So if you see behind, at the bottom of this slide here, we looked at the Health Authority of Abu Dhabi. We looked at Pôle Emploi in France. We looked at the Federal Tax Service in Russia. Italy here, we looked at PagoPA, which is the payment platform that was launched by the Agency for Digital Italy. And in Spain, we looked at Biscay TIC. And the process was we brought everyone in one room, and it was a very focused activity with the stakeholders who actually had built those systems to understand from them what worked, what didn't work. And as you can see, we came up with very interesting results. And so what I'm going to summarize here is a little bit of what we've seen. There are some things that are very much in common and some things that are typically very different. There's one thing actually that I thought was very interesting in this study. When we asked the stakeholders, listen to this, this is interesting. Are you more of a risk taker than the organization that you work in? Or are you less of a risk taker than the organization that you work in? Everyone said, we are actually bigger risk takers than the organization that we work in. So there's already a bit of a disconnect between the people who are working, implementing the project, and the organization that they work in. But this is what seems to be working very well. And as I will go through, you see where the examples. So for instance, creating new structures and entities. Do not try to attack digital innovation as any other project. You have to dedicate the right resource to it. You have to have some people who are successful at it. And we saw this very clearly with the Russian Tax Federation, as well as in Biscay, which is the Basque country in Spain. Build agile and autonomous teams. Who are these people that you are going to be using? Can you bring people from the outside? Can you rely on expertise from outside your own department? By the way, the private sector does this really well. You know, when you don't know something, you actually go ahead and you say, I don't know something, you know, who can I hire to help me? We found that in a lot of government agencies, going outside and getting that expertise is very difficult. Collaboration with external bodies. I will give you again the Amazon example. Not just Amazon, any sort of digital, a company that's digitally enabled. How their customers feel about them, their interaction with their customers, the customer, what we call at EY, the customer journey, is absolutely essential. A lot of government organizations don't have that sense. What is it that our citizens are looking for? So be very clear in engaging your stakeholders in the process. Put the customer front and center. What is it that we're trying to provide? That question needs to be asked all the time. And this is where, you know, because of the way government programs and plans for projects, the planning happens, you know, in year number 1, the execution happens in year number 3 or year number 4. Between number 1 and number 4, the needs have changed, right? So this ability to remain attentive to the needs that have changed. Learn from the disruptors. When we looked at what Abu Dhabi was doing, this was very interesting. They actually had started on the automation of their health insurance scheme. The company that was doing the work failed. They actually went and they hired a company that was a startup with 0 track record, but it had the right people on board, and then they became very successful. So this ability to actually take some chances is very useful. The final one, always focus on the next stage of the journey, right? You cannot just focus on where we are right now. The French did this very well because they set up this, the website that they set up actually asked for ideas from the public. Tell us what you'd like us to do next. So they were, in a way, outsourcing the innovation to the public and trying to get some ideas from them. Now, this doesn't mean that if you do the 6 things that I mentioned here, everything that you will do will succeed. But it is clear when we did this analysis, this research, that this is what came out. The report, by the way, and I'm finishing, I know Andrea's looking at me, the report with INSEAD was actually released today, so this is the first time I talk about this report. I'm sure Andrea can give you a copy of it. It was done between INSEAD and EY. So I will stop here. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the event.